Hello, folks. This is called Understanding Inflation with a Cup of Coffee. This will be the second part of the first part. In my previous essay on what really gives money value, the intelligent application of work, I created two imaginary unpopulated planets where the working people on planet W stands for work, and the investor aristocracy class on planet M stands for money, are separated to show that working people can survive and even thrive without any money, while the richest people in history literally starved or died of exposure because they had nothing to buy with their money and nobody to do the work for them. And don't worry, these essays are not odes to Marxist proletariat and bourgeois classes. Any resemblance is purely coincidental. In this similarly themed essay, I'm going to use a prop to show how inflation is caused by the influx of earned money being constantly injected into the stream of earned money. This is the prop. A recalibration of why we humans created money in the first place. This should be self-evident. But unfortunately, too many working people believe rich people are rich because they are smarter and work harder. That notion is sometimes true, oftentimes it is not. But first, let's keep in mind economic experts use language and terms that can be confusing and cryptic. Fiat money, currency pegged to gold, petrodollar, and lately cryptocurrency. These things have less to do with what really causes inflation than the experts would have us believe. Economists cite various culprits at various times to support why you can't afford a house, or a car, or gas, or groceries, never mind college or a vacation. They say high interest rates cause contraction, too low of interest rates cause inflation. National debt is bad because we have to spend so much to service the debt. Entrepreneurs like to use debt to limit their risk. Then there's the argument for or against economic systems, and I'll briefly touch on a few of them now in no particular order. Classic economics, free market capitalism. This is basically the economic system we are familiar with, where privately owned businesses operate with minimal government intervention, and prices, production, and distribution are determined by supply, demand, and competition. Free market capitalism emphasizes private ownership of the means of production, voluntary exchange, and minimal government interference in economic activities. In this system, prices and production levels are guided by supply and demand, meaning that when demand for a product rises, prices increase, encouraging producers to supply more and vice versa. Competition among businesses drives efficiency, innovation, and better consumer choices, while profits serve as the primary motivation for enterprises. The role of government. The government's role in free market capitalism is limited typically to enforcing property rights, contracts, and basic regulations to prevent fraud and monopolistic practices. Unlike command economies where the state dictates production and pricing, free market capitalism allows individuals and businesses to make independent economic choices. Laissez-faire capitalism is a little bit very similar, maybe a little bit even more lax, a little bit more biased towards let the market be. In fact, here's a French phrase: leave it be or let it do. Laissez-faire capitalism emphasizes minimal government intervention in the economy. In this system, individuals and businesses are free to make economic decisions, including production, trade, and pricing, without government-imposed restrictions such as subsidies, price controls, or licensing, as long as they do not violate the rights of others. The government's role is limited to protecting property rights, enforcing contracts, and preventing the initiation of force or fraud. Adam Smith's Invisible Hand of the Market, Ayn Rand's Objectivism, and Edward von Mises' Austrian economics might be considered versions of laissez-faire capitalism. And then there's Keynesian economics. Keynesian economics, developed by British economist John Maynard Keynes, who was Franklin Delano Roosevelt's economic advisor, asserts that aggregate demand, the total spending by households, businesses, and government, is a primary driver of economic activity and employment levels, unlike classical economies, which assumes markets self-correct to full employment. Keynesian thought emerged during the Great Depression of the 1930s when traditional economic theories failed to explain persistent unemployment and economic collapse. Keynes' seminal work, The General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money, in 1936, challenged the classical view that flexible wages and prices automatically restore full employment. His ideas influenced policies such as the New Deal in the United States, where government spending on public works projects aimed to reduce employment and stimulate growth. And then there's communism and Marxism. They're related socioeconomic systems where the community collectively owns the means of production, aiming to create a classless society with wealth distributed according to need. Communism is based on the idea of common ownership of resources and production. In theory, there is no private property, and the wealth generated by society is shared equally or according to individual needs, following the principle from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. That's be Marx and Engels. The system seeks to eliminate class distinctions, particularly between proletariat, working class, and the bourgeois owners of capital, which Marx identified as a source of exploitation under capitalism. And honest, I've never even read Das Kapital. Socialism and social doctrine that calls for public rather than private ownership or control of property and natural resources, the things we have in common. According to the socialist view, individuals do not live or work in isolation but live in cooperation with one another. Furthermore, everything that people produce is in some sense a social product, and everyone who contributes to the production of a good is entitled to a share in it. Society as a whole, therefore, should own or at least control property for the benefit of all of its members. Market socialism begins to look like a hybrid, as the name implies. Democratic socialism is a political ideology that advocates for a democratically run and decentralized socialist economy. It emphasizes economic democracy where workers have a say in the management of their workplace and the economy, and aims to abolish capitalism in favor of a socialist system that prioritizes the public needs over profit. And that's certainly an arguable point. All that above was boilerplate off the internet, kind of just your basic descriptions of what they are. And this is my take here. Most Western democracies are structured as hybrid capitalistic socio-economic systems and meld vigorous private entrepreneurial-driven businesses with social ownership and control over many of the things we all have in common, such as public roads, military, fire and police departments, the library system, school systems, the courts and the legal systems, and government has a role in providing a social safety net, provide a regulatory system designed to protect the environment and ensure safety in the workplace. And I think most Western democracies, all the Scandinavian countries and European countries, United States, Canada, are all a hybrid between capitalistic and social systems. And I don't think that is very arguable. That's just the way it is. That's just needs to be fine-tuned. In the first essay, I barely delved into the tools and canons of capitalists: debt leverage, interest, usury, lending, borrowing, credit, fiat money, gold, silver, cryptocurrency. We haven't even mentioned the petrodollar and the U.S. dollar as world reserve currency given the U.S. global hegemony, and haven't mentioned the growing BRICS alliance and their intention to stop trading in U.S. dollars, which will destroy the U.S. global hegemony. For now, I just want to discuss what I think causes inflation. It's a physical thing, not so much a fiscal thing. Another element to economic stability or upheaval is the role of falling and rising interest rates and their relationship to inflation, in that I am reminded of Thomas Jefferson's quote: "If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs." The last sentence from Jefferson's quote requires a deeper discussion for later. Suffice to point out for now that there is no greater public utility than money, and yet the production and distribution of our public currency is largely controlled by private banking institutions with public-sounding names, such as the Federal Reserve. Since our economy is failing working people, I suggest taking a look at Ellen Brown's books and websites, The Public Banking Solution and The Web of Debt. In the previous essay, I thought it useful to show where inflation and the diminishing buying power of the dollar comes from by separating the workers from the aristocrats, the proletariat from the bourgeois. If I must, this recalibration showed the physical workers could thrive in a raw world without any money, while the fiscal, the money people, would starve without the goods and services provided by the working people. Now I want to develop another analogy that I hope will demonstrate the difference between the physical economy from the fiscal. Physical, let me make that enunciate that. The physical economy from the fiscal. If you drink coffee now, it would be a good time to pour yourself a cup, because that's where this analogy starts. A good cup of coffee has three main elements: water, the coffee, and the cup. In our analogy, the water represents money. Current drought conditions notwithstanding, water is plentiful and readily available. Money is made from paper and ink, and there is little overhead expense to make a dollar bill, which contains the same amount of paper and ink as does a $1,000 bill. The coffee represents the intelligent application of labor. The cup we will get to later. To start, we must agree a good cup of coffee has to have a good amount of ground coffee in proportion to the water, or else you have 1960s truck stop swill. The recommended amount is 1 to 2 tablespoons of coffee grounds per cup, 8 ounces of water. That's fairly skookum and just the way I like it. Good strong coffee is the secret to Starbucks success. What we have here is a balanced ratio of coffee to water, labor to currency. Now let's think about the process of how that coffee got in your bag or can. First of all, coffee beans, called fruit, like particular types of soil. They like particular types of climate. They need daylight and thrive best in South America, Africa, Hawaii, and other equatorial places that meet the optimum growing conditions. Let's begin with the effort of finding that ideal location, the traipsing about to find suitable soil. Gaining legal access to the land, testing the soil, clearing the ground and tilling the soil, obtaining and paying for the coffee bean seeds, germinating the seeds into sprouts, growing the sprouts into seedlings, transplanting the seedlings into the rows of the fields, and nurturing, fertilizing, and pruning the plants until they bear coffee fruit. Selecting the right fruit, either by hand-picking or machine, but keep in mind the finest coffees are hand-picked. Transporting the coffee beans for drying and post-harvesting processing, and there are several methods too detailed to go into here, but keep in mind both the hand sorting and the honey process involve a lot of tedious labor and quality control. When the beans are ready, they are put in burlap bags and shipped to coffee roasters all around the world. After the coffee beans are roasted to their desired color, they are either packaged as whole beans or ground and then packaged. Finally, the coffee is shipped to a retailer where a store employee stocks the shelves. We've just gone over the many steps to grow and bring coffee to your coffee maker. We skipped over the other physical labors that go into the process. For instance, the manufacture of the farming equipment, the tractors, the hand tools, the trucks, the tires on the trucks, the roads upon which the trucks roll, and we're still just skimming the surface of the real physical work that goes into a cup of coffee. We turn on the tap, add water to the pot, pour it into the coffee maker, add a filter and the coffee. Turn it on and wait a bit, and that wonderful, robust coffee aroma fills the kitchen. You've added just the right amount of coffee for the pot, and taste it, and voila, wonderful, full-bodied, nice, hearty aftertaste. That is the result of the balanced proportion of coffee to water, work to money. You have successfully combined the intelligent application of labor, of work, with the easy-to-produce medium, water, to get your perfect cup of coffee. Now you drink your coffee down about a third, and someone pours hot water into your cup to top it off. It's still brown, it still looks like coffee, but it's not as robust. But you can't say it's not a cup of coffee. Then you drink that down another third, and someone tops it off again with hot water. It's now a lighter brown, it's weak, it doesn't taste good, it's swill, but some can argue it's still technically a cup of coffee. Welcome to the truck stop and diner coffees of the 60s. I think you see where this is going. The coffee represents all the interconnected cooperative work that is required to bring the coffee into your home. The water is the money. There are a lot of excuses for inflation, but they all deceive you because they pretend things are getting more expensive all the time. That's just not accurate. The money that represents work is constantly getting diluted by unearned money. And what is unearned money? That is the money that is created from money, from interest, from usury, from stock market investment money, that sort of thing. And on the lower end of the scale, creating money to hand out to people who just don't want to work. And that's another topic for another day. The point to keep in the forefront of your mind is this: things are not getting more expensive. Money is constantly being diluted. When they claim things are getting more expensive, that means everybody is to blame. Every company has to pass on their increased cost of doing business by increasing their cost to their customer, and on it goes. Capitalism, in its most innocent form and naive interpretation, is good in that it rewards innovation and it rewards risk, but some of the pitfalls of that indivisible hand of capitalism are axioms inherent to free market capitalism. And I'll touch on but three for now: supply and demand, economies of scale, and charge whatever the market will bear. The COVID pandemic of 2019 through 2020 wasn't the originator of inflation, but it certainly propelled us deeper into the unbalanced ratio of money to labor quagmire we're in now. Because factories and many non-essential businesses shut down, supply dropped, making demand higher. Adding to this heightened, even frenzied demand came charge whatever the market will bear. They did, and prices of everything skyrocketed, and even though supply lines have returned to pandemic levels, pre-pandemic levels now, the prices are staying high until people hit their consumer spending threshold, and we're about there. Now add the injection of unearned money via the payroll protection plan into our system as a social safety mechanism, so people wouldn't go hungry, so people can make payments and hang on until things return to normal, so restaurants wouldn't shut down, so on. You guys all know all that. So that a further collapse of the consumer force wouldn't domino into total financial depression. That unearned money diluted the earned money supply and diluted the value of the dollar, as does the money-making, money investor class, aristocratic self-entitlement, and unearned money gambit we're kind of used to. Add to that the axiom economies of scale, where big companies merge to take over or otherwise destroy their competition. That is, competition that makes the competitors strive to convince consumers their product is the best at the cheapest price. Once the big companies swallow up the little companies, the competition is lost, and the big companies can charge whatever they damn well want, or whatever the market will bear. But what about that coffee cup? Well, it's a physical thing, so many of the same processes that created the coffee in that cup of coffee hold true for the clay, the china, the tin, the plastic from which your coffee cup is made. When it comes to solving inflation, working people need to think physical. What we know, not physical, the thing they know. And it should all be self-evident. And thanks for listening.